Hey, welcome everybody. My name is Jesse Randall. I am the CEO and co-founder of Sweater, and we are your hosts for Founder Saga. We're excited. Both Alex and I are coming to you from California today. We'll call this the holiday edition.
Yeah.
We're grateful to be spending some time with family and especially in some nice, a little bit warmer weather. So I'm excited to be hosting Alex Bean with us, who's the CBO and co-founder of Divvy. So Divvy has been around for quite a few years now, and I've been excited to watch your growth. I remember hearing about Divvy in your earlier days before you hit your big growth spurt within the last few years, and it's been exciting to watch you both raise capital and get into the market. Um, I don't think that I told you this earlier, but with a different company I work with, we went through Divvy to have our corporate cards and love the experience. So I've been using your software for about the last 8 months,
Yeah, there
and
we go.
it's been a great experience. So, overall, I mean, Divvy's done some amazing things. You can tell me the exact stats when I hand it over to you, but as far as I understand, you've raised over $200 million in the last year and a half or so, and if I recall, also in pretty close succession to each other, which is an exciting ride to bring on capital like that. And of course, you guys are running to take the market, so it's great
Excited
to
is
have you
one
on
way
here.
to put it.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for having me on as well. Happy to get into it and talk about Divvy and
Yeah,
entrepreneurs.
absolutely. So let's review the agenda real quick so we're on the same page. So what we'll do here is we'll spend just a couple of minutes kind of overlaying where Divvy's at right now, so everybody has a clear view of the work that you've done and what you've accomplished already. Then I want to go back in time and talk about the what I call the napkin moment, which is where you really conceived the idea with you and your
Yep,
co-founders, what
yep.
that looked like on day one. We kind of pick apart how things may have changed, and then we're going to dive into you selected the topic of first revenue, and really we'll examine this whole period of time between when you first came up with the idea on the back of the napkin and when you got your first true outside funding, and examine that period of time and what you went through. So we'll dive into that and think of this more like a coffee shop kind of a conversation of exploration and understanding what you went through. And then at the end, if we have some questions, we'll take a little bit of Q&A, and then we'll hand over the last 5 minutes or so to you to offer some words of wisdom, given what you've been through the last few years. Sound
Uh,
good?
yeah, let's go. So you want me to kind of outline where Divvy's at right now?
Yeah, that's a great spot to start. Let's do it.
Yeah, so Divvy was founded in 2016, kind of end of 2016. So we've been around for almost 5 years. I guess just over four, but um, we've got just under 10,000 customers. So we consider 10,000 a critical mass, or at least like a really good tipping point of where you get a certain level of customer and you can jump over the hill. Our customer is the SMB, so we say anyone from 1 to 500 employees is really kind of where we spend most of our time. We are typically selling really all across industries, so we go to from tech to blue collar to service based, both professional services as well as kind of the actual service space like AC and plumber, et cetera. So we really don't have a focus on industry. It's more of company size. We started out as a card expense management, and we've really flipped into a spend management tool, which includes cash reimbursements, credit card, check, or not check, but ACH, kind of putting it all into one tool for these SMBs to have, spend opportunities and to automate and to see budgets and be dynamic. And so that's why we exist. We got around 300 employees, and we've been in market for probably just around 2 years. So that's the kind of quick stat line for you.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Well, what a journey, right? So real quick, in the middle of all this, when did you really hit that inflection point that spun you up to get interest from some of these bigger financing partners?
So, so my co-founder is Blake Murray. He's the CEO, co-founder. We've been friends for a long time. We knew each other in elementary school, actually. Graduated high school, and we kind of went our separate ways. And then we came back and we started talking about Divvy. And really, when you say like, where do we hit a tipping point? It's funny because like we had this idea, this thing that we knew if we could do it, it was going to work. Like we knew the second we could offer what we had envisioned in our minds to the market, it was going. But it was the long slog was actually getting to the market. So that's what took the time and the energy and the ups and downs and the roller coasters. But once we actually got to market, that was our tipping point. And the second we went to market is when people started raising their hands, and that's when we started getting the investments, and they really started to see what we had. Once it went to market again, we just started to see the growth, and then the investments came from there.
Nice. That's really cool. Okay, we're going to dive more into that. Let's why don't we hop in the time machine and go back to day one when you guys said you mentioned that you sat down and you conceived of this. So
Yeah.
I mean, what did that look like? I mean, this was this in 2016, and that was a starting
20,
point, or was this been longer?
February 20, yeah, February 2016. I get a call from Blake. It was his brainchild, right? It was kind of up in his head. He was running these pizza stores, and he had 5 locations, and he had a manager kind of running each store. And it was this world where he's like, they're giving me these receipts from like 2 months ago, and they're just plopping them on my desk and saying, "Hey, I need a $3,000 reimbursement." And he's like, "Well, that was my profit for the month." Like, he had no idea if he was in the black or in the red. And so that was kind of the issue. And when he went to the market and, try to figure out a solution, it was like, well, use Expensify to get your receipts back, and, have them use Amex corporate cards. So this was his problem. So he calls me. It's February 2016. Hadn't really seen him in a long time. So it was like, he's like, "Hey, can I come to your house?" And I'm like, "Yeah, man. Like, come down." So he comes down, and I'm currently at the time was building custom software. So I was with, doing, building custom software, and kind of understood the process of getting technology out the door. So he calls me. He comes to my house. We were talking earlier. I have 4 kids, so we go down to the basement. We have these blue couches down there. And he's like, "Well, I got an idea." I'm like, let's hear it. Explains the pizza studio issue. And we started saying, like, okay, wait a minute, hold on. What if everyone's going to start using Apple Pay, right? So we started thinking in this world of like, well, in the future, everyone's going to have their phone when they pay. So we're like, well, if you have your phone, you can now display all the info. Like, your budget would be dynamic. And every time anyone spent in your company, you would know exactly, if you were in the red or the black. So this was like the impetus of like what we started talking about in our first meeting, was that. And so from there, we started to say, okay, let's see if it's even possible. And we really looked at Apple Pay, and we looked at Venmo, and said, if we can create that for the business world, like, we can create one account and divvy it out, hence the name, and divvy out like access to the bank account, and again, access parts of the bank account. That was the whole premise, and that's what got us off from those blue couches in my basement. Is where we started.
That's awesome. All right, so he was running a pizza chain, and you
Yep.
were building software off
And
on
I was
your own.
on the sales side. I want to be clear, like, we're not engineers, we're not product guys. I do think we have an eye for product, but that is not our discipline. No.
Yeah. Okay, so let's get into how you actually got this to market. So I mean, you said earlier that it was kind of a long slog to get to the point where you're
Yep.
actually in market.
Yep.
So what was the challenge there? I mean, did you have challenges building? I mean, what
Yeah.
was the definition? What was it?
So I'm pretty jealous of the people coming up in fintech now, because I feel like even in the last short few years, there's a lot more technologies and banks that are wanting to work with fintechs. So at the time, we were like trying to figure out with banks, because we say to ourselves, and by the way, our great innovation is, well, what if we took the Amex card and the Expensify software and we just put them into one thing, which at the time seemed like it should exist, and it just didn't.
It's always that way.
So we were calling all these banks that we do. Probably talked to, I don't know, 25 banks or so, from local credit community, local credit unions, and big banks. And it was kind of like they just didn't have the technology to enable us to build what we wanted. So that was really difficult, because we had to be a bank. We had to issue a card, but we wanted to give a customer experience that like they didn't give. So we finally found a bank, US Bank. We spent, I don't know, 8 months, 15 people building into US Bank, getting it all going, super excited, thought we were like, off to the races. And 8 months into it, we get a call from a middle manager on the compliance side, and they just shut everything down. They're just like,
No
sorry.
kidding.
Basically, they said, we're US Bank. We don't want to take the compliance risk with what your little fintech's doing, so we're just going to shut you down.
Oh,
It was
geez.
like devastating.
Oh,
Devastating.
yeah.
So, we're facing like, do we just give our friends and family their money back? Like, did we just waste everyone's time? Like, what do we do type thing? And yeah, I mean, those were a long, actually, I would say it was a long couple of weeks. But what happened is we found out like on a Thursday, you know, we were panicking Friday and Saturday, and by Monday we were like on the phone, on planes, like calling these other banks to figure it out. And pretty soon after, we found another bank and spent another 4 or 5 months building into this bank. But like finding the right bank, and again, this is stuff like we didn't know at the beginning, but we realized, oh, you got to have a bank who can be a card issuer. Then you've got to find someone who can underwrite on your behalf, because like we're not underwriting, we need a bank to do it. So you got to find a bank that was friendly with us and allowed us to do what we wanted to do, but did all the stuff they needed to do. And you know, it's a lot more prevalent now, but at the time it was pretty difficult.
Oh my gosh. No, I can only imagine. I mean, how stressful that is. How long had you been working with US Bank when they brought you that news?
8 months, nine
Oh my
months.
gosh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah,
We'd already
that's
spent a fair amount of money. We had 15 employees, like I said, maybe even a little more at the time, because we thought we were about to launch. We thought we were gearing up for our big go. And the thing about Divvy is we really feel like we're taking a big swing, right? We're not just going after this small little niche segment. We are trying to be the spend management tool for all small businesses. So that's every bank, you know, that's Capital One, that's Amex, that's the swing is big, right? Replacing
mhm.
Expensify, Bill.com, all of it squashed into one system. So we had raised friends and family funds to go take this big swing. And we knew we were taking a big swing. And when you do that, you know, your MVP takes longer. And I'll give you a good
Mhm.
example of this. So when we were getting close to launching, it was like, well, we should launch with a debit card because it's easier. And a lot of people do it. It's like, well, let's just get the debit card out there. We'll see how people resonate with the software, and let's go with debit. And Blake and I it just didn't feel right. We're like, and it came back to Blake at his studio, at his pizza location. He's like, if I am running my pizza location, I'm going to use a credit card because I want the cash flow. I want the rewards. I want the protection. So it was one of those like, well, I wouldn't ever expect my small business to use a debit card. So no, we won't do it. And that decision itself cost us an extra 500,000 up front, a lot more regulation. We had to hire 5 more people. Like it was a big decision, but we just absolutely were not going to settle for a poorer experience for our customers. So those types of things just kept coming up and coming up and coming up, where it was like, okay, well, we're going to delay it another 4 months because we got to get this thing done. So yeah,
Yeah.
big slog before we actually got the ball at the door. I think it was April of 2018 before you can realistically say we had like a viable product.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. So you're talking 2 years from the time
Yeah.
that you, okay. Do you mind me asking about how much capital you had put into the product at that point? I mean, this doesn't sound like it's a small build. Sounds
Uh,
pretty substantial.
enough. Yeah.
Plenty.
More than 1 million. We'll put it that way.
Okay. Yeah, that's fair. So, I mean, making a decision like that, I mean, was there pressure from, I don't know, the friends and family? I'm not sure, if you had any institutional money in by then. Was there any
Nope.
pressure to go to market faster? Were they pushing back against?
Yeah. So honestly, that like looking back on it, and you know, we still think our journey is we have a lot more to go on our journey, so we're not done by any means, but we're definitely in a different spot today than we were 4 years ago. And looking back on it, the friends and family investors that we had, and the angels, we had a few angels in, it couldn't have been better, right? And what I mean by that is patient. They still believed in Blake and I. They didn't overly give their opinion, which a lot of times like people want to come in too early and they want to give their opinion on whatever it might be. And the reality is like you either believe in a founder's vision and their ability to execute it, or they should be out, right? Like you
Mhm.
can't really manage from the sideline. So they were amazing. That's my point, and they gave us the patience. And Blake and I, we were getting close. We were getting close, and the product was coming together. And it just took longer to get to market than we wanted. But our early investors were very patient, and honestly, they could have easily said, "Hey, just shut it down. We want the rest of our money back. Like we're good." But they were patient, and thankfully, it's working for them and for us. So it's been great.
Oh, that's awesome. So, what would you say to founders who are looking at something that's ambitious, like you guys,
Yeah.
tackled? I mean, going swinging for the fences. It's hard to find the right kind of partners to get you there. I mean, would you say that that's? I mean, obviously, you guys have made it, at least to a certain point. You got through maybe the riskiest part. I mean, is it going to work out, or should they take a smaller bite?
Okay, so a few things on this, because by the way, I don't think there's generic advice that works for all, right? So, for example, I think
Agreed.
some businesses have to take VC money. You got to go faster. You got to go. And there's other businesses that say like your business isn't designed for VC money. Like, don't like just do it yourself. Don't take outside investment. Own the thing and go slow. So, when I give this advice, I want to be clear. It's not for all people, but um, a few things. One is like, so Blake and I grew up in Redmond, Washington, which is Microsoft country. It's,
Hmm.
everyone knows that now, but we grew up in the 80s and 90s there, and it was a nothing place. Like a 300-acre cow farm on the way to the house. And now that's, Microsoft and Costco and Amazon and all these big companies. And I say that because Blake and I had seen nothing come to like be the biggest company in the world, Microsoft and Amazon. So for good or for better or for worse, we thought big. We basically kind of said like, why not us?
Hmm.
Why can't we be better than Amex? Which again is like an asinine comment. You shouldn't even be allowed to say it, but that was kind of our mantra. So we thought to ourselves, we have something. We know if we do it correctly, every small business on the planet will want it. So let's go beat the big boys. So with that type of mentality, you have to go fundraise. You have to be okay with dilution. You have to go billion or bust, which is like if we don't go build $1 billion+ business, we ain't making money. That was our mantra from the early days, and it worked for us. Now, well, working. The other thing I would say is, so a lot of people, and a lot of people kind of pitch me their ideas, or I hear them, and there's a few things I get really concerned about. One, a lot of people like they say, "Oh, I've got a really good idea," and I say, "Well, how do you know?" And like the way that they know is they basically think that they have a good idea, which is one. Like they haven't really told too many people. They think they've got it all figured out, and they want to, stay in their science lab until it's completely done before they show the world. But once it unveils, they're going to get it. And I think that can be really dangerous. The other thing is they show friends and family, and guess who's going to think your idea is cool? Your mom. Like she's going to think it's cool, and your friends are going to think it's cool. But you've got to get out of the box and you've got to go show a statistically big enough sample. So for us, it was like we had designed these wireframes like back in the beginning, like right after the blue couch story. We mocked it up, we had it fairly well designed, and we went and like pre-sold it to, let's just say, 100 people. It was more than 100, but like 100 people. And these are people that didn't know us, right? Friends of friends of friends, or on LinkedIn, just going to the right buyer and showing them what we had. And the big thing that we realized, oh my gosh, this is going to work, was the physical reaction that we received from these potential buyers, which would be stuff like I'd be showing and doing a demo, and they'd say, whoa, 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 stop. You can do what? And I'd be like, oh, we can do like dynamic budgets. And they'd be like, are you kidding me? So I can, and they would start to like just go nuts. They would be like, wait a minute. So now I can send 10 people to Vegas and track all their spend and automate the expense report. And we're like, yeah, that's what we're talking about. And the reaction was so strong from so many people that were not my parents and not my friends, that we started to be like, oh my gosh, like if this thing that we have on a design can be done, it is a big deal. And I think a lot of people don't connect that dots. They think they can fundraise, and then it can be years down the road before they really want to bring it out to the world. And you got to go out there and sell it, frankly, as early as you possibly can.
Yeah. Oh man, I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, that's I don't know if you've ever spoken with someone who says that they're a great cook, and then you go to their house and they make you some food, and you're like, man, that was okay.
Yeah.
Why do they think they're a great cook? It's because they're usually cooking for people that know them.
Yep.
And what's the feedback
Yep.
they always get? Your food's
Yep.
awesome, right? It's so
Or,
important to
or,
get out there
or,
and
or
talk to
this.
people.
Hey, how do you like my food? Oh, it's good. Right? Like, of course they're gonna say that. Like, of course they're gonna say your food's good. They have to be like begging for the recipe. If they're not begging for the recipe, then your food's not actually that good.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, let's shift gears a little bit. That's quite a ride you went on with the product. So let's talk about when you hit market and you started selling and getting to revenue.
Yep.
So how did you manage that? Did you have a wait list before you launched? Did you go out and try to hit some key accounts that you would brag about? I mean, what was the journey like
Uh,
there?
yeah, both. So I'll talk about it. So Blake and I, we're in Salt Lake now. It's where our Divvy is. We love the community there. Lots of great tech coming up. And we had this mantra of like, let's own Utah. So what that meant to us was like, if we can own Utah, and get this, like, own enough where we could like rattle off all these accounts and the big names and stuff. Then we could start to expand past Utah, and that was what we started with. So when we first started, it was like I got connected to some people at Qualtrics and showed them what we were building, and again, they loved what we were doing. So we landed Qualtrics and like Jane and some other well-known logos pretty early. Not like their entire company orgs, but like pretty early. We got some advocates that loved what we were doing. And from that, our product wasn't great. They were super patient and champions with us as we were like going through all the stuff. But they were the logos that we could point to, and we could go call other people and say, hey, these people use it. And because these people use it, you should use it. And that really worked for us. Yeah, I mean, so logos was a big thing. And obviously when we did those 100 plus, 200 demos at the beginning and got that physical reaction, that was the wait list. Hey, we'll call you in a year when it's done. And that's who we started like calling back and saying, hey, we can do X, Y, Z. You still interested? And started to pile up from there.
That's great. So out of the gates, I mean, I guess, was the conversion rate on those that were waiting for you pretty high, or was it disappointing when you actually tried to harvest what people had expressed interest in?
So let's be clear, Divvy is free, right?
Fair.
So when we go to market, we go to someone and we say, hey, you know how you're paying $20 a month per user for Expensify? Well, let's just get rid of that and we'll give you our software for free. And it's like, what's the catch type thing? So we're not getting people to throw money at us right now. They do have to give up their comfortability with like Amex or whatever that they were using before, and they have to flip. So we do have some hurdles, but largely the people that wanted to use Divvy had an issue, for example, going over budget or having sales reps that wouldn't stay within a budget. That was so strong to them that they almost didn't care. They said, no, I've been using Amex and I hate it because it doesn't solve this problem. So you tell me when you're ready and we can solve this problem and I'm in. And I would say, no, we actually felt really good about our conversion. And I said it earlier, Divvy has not been easy, right? The last couple of years, raising funds and adding customers isn't just like easy. And you know this, you've seen a lot of businesses. So we've had a lot of roller coaster moments in the last 2 years, but from a product market fit, that has not been our problem. Meaning from day one, once we had it and we could there's like 5 things that we do that no one else does. And when we put that into the market did gobble up that. And obviously we just had to get better product and do a bunch of stuff better than we originally did. And we're still trying to do better. But no, I can't say that that the wait list didn't like what they saw. They were happy with it.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, great validation too, that you built something right. So would you consider yourselves, I mean, it sounds like you can consider yourselves a product first company.
Yeah. And again, it's funny because Blake and I are not product people by nature, right? In the sense of, I said it earlier, we're not engineers. Blake, my compliment to Blake, he does certain things so well. One is his think big vision. Like he's this guy from Utah who thinks he can be like the next Steve Jobs, which again is just like a crazy mindset to have, but he thinks big, and that's great. But product too, right? So he will not let crap go out the door. And it bothers him if it's just not a really good experience. And so like, I said earlier, the credit example, he has to make sure that that he would buy it, that he would call his friends and tell them to buy it. And so he's done a really good job of making sure that, with our product team, obviously we have phenomenal product people, but making sure that like the product is what it needs to be. Because if you don't have a good product, then you're selling snake oil, and you can sell for a bit, but at some point that'll catch up to you. So you've got to have a product that your customers like, otherwise you're screwed.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So can I ask, are there any other co-founders between other than you and Blake?
No, it's just Blake and I.
Nice. So between the two of you, I mean, if you can think back, a good question that someone asked last week during one of our sessions was, when did everything look from the outside like things were just awesome, but on the inside of the company and between you and Blake, there was a rough moment going on, and what was it, and why? How did you manage that feeling?
So, I'm actually really grateful there's only 2 founders. So, and because the dynamics would shift with 3, right? And I think it can work. So I don't want to tell someone if they have 3 that they're in trouble, but for us, Divvy has worked because Blake, it was his original idea, and he brought in some of the initial funding, and he's the CEO. So, right, like he's the quarterback. And I always knew he was the quarterback. So I played running back, and I've been with him from the beginning, and we built this thing together. But because we kind of knew each other's roles, and I knew what he was really good at, so he, as the things I've already described, but he's also an introvert by nature. I'm an extrovert. So we matched well, and it was like, all right, well, I'll go do these things, you do these things. And oh, by the way, it's just you and me in terms of trust and loyalty, right? So like his he has to trust me to help him understand when the answer is no. Hey, our employees are mad about XYZ, or hey, here's feedback on what we're starting to see. And he's done a really good job of listening to me in that case. But we have that kind of like symbiotic or one-on-one relationship where we can look each other in the eyes and be like, hey, this is either going really well, or these are the issues that we have. Now, to answer your question, I think from the day we started fundraising, people have thought like, oh, once you announce a public raise of like $50 million or $10 million, whatever it is, it doesn't matter. People initially like they almost like think that money's in your pocket. It's like not how it is. And like there's a lot of responsibility that comes with fundraising, and you raise 3 times in like a year and a half, and like, guess what? You have to do only this. So you got to hire the right people. You can't make mistakes. For us, it's really just like every month is a grind. But for us, it was COVID. And I know everyone else also suffered. A lot of people, wasn't just like they all thought it was great, but like January, February, we were hitting all these amazing numbers, and even March. And then the second COVID hit, opposite, right? And that's when things get tough, and you have to look yourself in the mirror and say like, are we going to hold through this? What are we going to do? What are our solutions? So we went through some stuff in March and April for sure, and some really hard decisions. But again, you have trust and loyalty with each other, and you can get through it.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, we've got a couple of questions that came in. So one of them is about IP. In the midst of all this, I mean, IP and software can be a tricky thing. Is IP something that you guys focused on, or are you just, aiming for your strategy to be more just to take the market and be in front of anyone that tries to mimic you?
Yeah. We have 2 patents that we're applying for. We A, don't plan on getting them, and B, if we do, it won't really matter. And the other thing I would say is like, even if you do get the IP, they're just going to figure out another way around it. Like you're not really going to prevent anyone. Like Uber can't prevent Lyft from existing. So the only real moat you have is being a better executor, is just getting out in the market and making it happen. So we don't go out there and just tell everyone how we build like a dynamic budget, but like we can't really prevent other people from doing it. So the reality is we don't care about it. We just go out and execute.
Nice. Other question that came in was around your MVP presentation and how you, persuaded people to get on like an early adopter list. Did you guys have a formalized strategy? Did you have a number you were aiming for? Was it an organized effort, or was it something different?
Organized and not. So, organized in the sense of like, we knew what we were going for, and we said, okay, let's go out there and we wanted to see the reaction. So actually, when I say it wasn't formal, since we didn't have like 100-person waiting list we were waiting for, right? We knew we were going to go do it, but we said, let's go talk to people. You start with your mom, then you start with your friends. And then from there, we're like, okay, cool. But then it was like, all right, we got to stop getting away from people we know. And so if I had to put a number for it, I would tell someone like, if you haven't pitched 25 people that are not related to you, and by the way, are actually annoyed you're taking their time type thing, like they shouldn't be happy they're on the call, right? Because if they are, then they're too eager. It's like they're too eager for the food, then they're going to give you bad feedback. You want people that are slightly annoyed that you're taking up their time. Go talk to at least 25 of those. And if you don't see like a hit rate of 15 really responding in a way that's positive, then yeah, I would rethink what you're doing.
That's good. That's good advice. Another question that just came in was around a board. So putting together a board, there's advisory boards, of course, there's official, oversight boards. At what point did you start bringing in outsiders to help you manage and oversee the business?
So, there's 2. They didn't ask one question, which they should. It was a mistake that we made, so I'm going to answer that. But from a board, we actually had a board early on. There were more advisors. They weren't really this formal board. They didn't even have a vote. It was just more of like, hey, to show that we are a thing. We had some credible people in our circles and groups that we said, hey, will you be on our board of advisors? And that was really what we went out. So really early on, like we had a board, but again, we didn't formally meet. They didn't have a vote. And I would advise that, like, you don't want to give anyone real control over your business before you're something.
Mhm.
If they want to give you advice and you exchange some stock shares for that, like great. It wasn't until we had our first formal fundraise that we had our first formal board. That's when that started. One mistake that we made, it's hopefully helpful for a lot of entrepreneurs out there. So again, I feel really bad. This is like Blake and I's fault. We hired a CMO as like our second hire. Just say that out loud and you realize it's so stupid, but we did it. And it was like, well, we didn't have a product. It took us a year plus to get a product to market. Why do you have a chief marketing officer? By the way, like a real chief marketing officer, not even just like a marketing person who can do some SEO for you. Like we overhired at the beginning and it was really, really dumb. So, whether you're bootstrapping it or you get funding, be careful overhiring. Like don't go hire someone whose skill set, by the way, is to manage 10 people when you're not going to have 10 people in marketing for 5 years. So, we made some mistakes like that all over the place and do it over differently if we could.
Oh, that's great. So now that you have a board, what's your quick advice on the best way to take advantage of them in the best way possible?
Yeah. So hold on for 1 second. Sorry, kids. Work from
It's all
home,
good.
people. So board. I would say this: take their advice seriously, but don't take their advice seriously. What I mean, they're very smart people. They have interest in your business. They've seen things. Listen to them, but don't let them dictate your business. Like they're not in day to day. They've not talked to customers. They don't actually know what the next best thing is to build. They look at the P&Ls. They see a lot of things like that, and so they know operationally what they'd like to see your business do, but they will not actually give you the day-to-day solution. So just be careful thinking that they're going to be the be all end all answer for you. They will not. And I, maybe there's the rare exception. And I like our board. This isn't like a fault on them. They've got how many other companies in their portfolio. So the other thing I would say, use, like we do quarterly board meetings, use those as a time for you to get a real self-check. Like they're going to tell you if your business is healthy or not. So you've got to go treat that meeting seriously and you got to present to them and get their critical feedback. And I think that's a really healthy thing to do.
That's good. I love that advice. Because you want to take advantage of what they have to offer, right? But at the end of the day, you've got 10,000 data points and they've probably got 100, maybe 500 data points that they're drawing their conclusions from, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Well, why don't we hand over the last, 5 minutes to you? And, we've got a lot of entrepreneurs out here that wish that they were already in the shoes that you're in right now. Clearly you've still got a long ways to go in achieving your big dream, but you're pretty far down the path. So looking back at somebody that's conceived of their idea last week or 3 months ago, what would you tell them to make it through this difficult time of getting into market?
Yeah. When you said people want to be in my shoes, my first thought was like, oh, with my 4 kids in a small apartment and they're like pooping their pants. Like it's not all great, but so to an entrepreneur out there, man, this is one of those tricky ones. I'll give it, but like first and foremost, things are never as good as they seem ever, and they're never as bad as they seem ever. So we raised like $100 million and it's like everyone looks on the outside like, oh man, like $100 million you put there. But they don't know that 10,000 fires that are happening inside the business and all the people that are stressed out and that have already been burnt out for 2 years prior. And it's like super stressful. So even though on the outside you're landing customers and you're raising money, I promise you it's not as good as you think. So tone down your ego, bring it down. On the other hand, it's like COVID, right? COVID was one of those where like, could it get any worse? They're literally shutting down our customers. And if those customers go out of business, we lose, a lot of money. And, you got to take a breath and get through those moments and realize like, okay, it's not that bad. We can fix it. Like we can get through this. And so that's advice just in terms of the journey of entrepreneurship. You have to ride the roller coasters. I used to tell my wife, like, there's days you go home and you're like, we've done it. We've built, this is a $1 billion+ company. Like, this is it. And like, we've made it. And then there's other days you're like, well, we should probably, get on LinkedIn and find a new job because it's probably over tomorrow. But, and so you got to make sure you ride that consistently. The other thing I'd say to an entrepreneur is like, if the dogs eat the dog food, you can make a ton of mistakes. If your food, going back to your cook analogy, is that good, and people are like, gosh, this pasta you just made me is the best pasta I've ever had, it doesn't matter if like you're in a bad environment or if the sink's dirty or whatever. It doesn't matter. Like, you can make a bunch of mistakes, but if the customer keeps coming back and saying, hey, this thing you're doing, like for Divvy, it was our dynamic budgets and the virtual cards to to each vendor, was so amazing to these customers that they put up with a ton of crap. There's flies in the dog food, there's hair in the dog food, but they still come back. And you have to be honest with yourself. Are our customers that happy with the dog food and want it that badly, or do we just want them to want it that badly? And if it's not the first, then you either got to just go find something different, or you got to pivot and do something new. Because through that journey of entrepreneurship, no matter how much money you've raised, no matter what it is, you're going to make a lot of mistakes. So you want the dog food to be that good. Otherwise, it's going to be really, really hard.
That's awesome. I love that analogy. I think that it's such a temptation, and from personal experience and from working with others as well, to make the restaurant gorgeous, right? And to have the perfect lighting and do all these other things, but then not focus on the food. Yep. And at the end of the day, you could have a fantastic location, but if the food's mediocre, people aren't going to come back. My wife and I just actually had that happen like 2 weeks ago. We went to some nice new restaurant in Fort Collins, and I walked out thinking that was okay. And my wife immediately after walking out, I wouldn't go back. And yeah. I just laughed. I was like, I guess we'll never go back.
But like, think about it. I had this sandwich in a food truck outside of our office the other day, and this guy says to me, I'm like in line, and I'm like, oh, check it. And the guy goes, "Number 4 is the best sandwich you'll ever have in your life." Oh, wow. Like, okay, I guess I'm getting number 4. So I get number 4. I eat it. I mean, is it the best ever? No, but it was dang good. And I'm like, that guy, this isn't a fancy restaurant, but that guy thinks that this is the best sandwich he's ever had. He literally told 3 people in line, you have to order the sandwich. If your customers, even as you tell them on like an Envision or a design doc, if they do not respond with that level of fervor, then like your sales processes are going to be long and laborious and costly, and you might get some people to say yes, but like they have to want it. And if they do, you can get through anything and survive and succeed. And if they don't, then like, again, you're just wasting someone's money.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I love that you tied that back to how it's going to draw stuff out in sales cycles and everything else, because that's just the way it is. I mean, you can beg anybody to come in, right? But ultimately they need to be the ones willing to do the work in to some regard, right? Or just some level in order to get there. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Nice. Well, we've spent up our time pretty fast. See? Thank you for joining us, Alex.
Yeah, I got to answer one question. Caesar, I saw Caesar's question of, will there be an expense management for families? Oh, cool. And the short answer is we get asked that all the time. And it's something Blake and I have always talked about doing. And we're very excited for the day that we can do it, and we will do it. So yes, the answer is it will happen, but we're not there right now.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, I can't wait for that one. I hate managing the family budget. I mean, good night. I have a master's in finance and I hate doing it. So
yeah, let's just say the dog food is there. People are eating it. They're actually using our product right now legally to use for their families because they want it so bad. It's not legally allowed to let them do it, but yeah, it's there. So cool.
Hey, you got the family operating underneath an LLC. It all works.
Yeah, we have some of those. I won't rat them out, but I do know there's a few.
That's awesome. Well, thank you again. We really appreciate your time, especially when you're on the road with your family. For everyone that's on the line, up next in about 13 minutes, we've got Chris Onan from Galvanize as well. And we'll be distributing this recording along with the others we've done so far via email, probably within the next week, so that everyone can get access to these, because we know we've had a couple of technical issues with distribution. So, but again, Alex, thank you. This has been awesome. And thank you everyone that's been attending today.
Cool. Thank you. Bye.